Weinstein. Welcome to Psychedelics today. Really excited to have you here finally. I know it's been a long time coming, so welcome to the show finally.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it, and it's great to be here.
Yeah. Could you give the listeners just a little bit of, intro? I've already read your background. Just a quick little overview of who you are and what you do in the space here.
Yeah, so I am a business coach. I do help a lot of people who I would say are on the medicine path, people who work with psychedelics themselves, but essentially, and some people that work in the psychedelic space, whether it's therapists, facilitators, coaches, integration coaches. But essentially, I call myself a spiritual business coach. I work to help people start and grow their businesses, mostly people in this kind of transformational space as therapists, coaches, healers, people doing, this kind of service-centered work. And essentially what I have is, I have various programs, a group mastermind. I do some private coaching, and then I have some other programs. But what I saw as someone who had been working in the space, for many years, I saw for myself that I couldn't find someone to guide me in my business that also understood how to integrate my own psychedelic path into my business. And after being called weird by a business coach, I realized, it was actually really important to me to have someone that understood what else I was doing besides just my business, which included, working with ayahuasca or working with other plants and medicines. And I just kept seeing that there was this lack of integration of psychedelics into people's actual work. This is many, many years ago. I was already a business coach, and the word integration or psychedelic integration, the phrase was just kind of coming in then. And I would see people in my own medicine community going back to the medicine over and over and over, but still coming with the same problems, still being unhappy, still really having no purpose or figuring out their life's path. And what I started noticing was this pattern of people looking to, heal something or fix something with the medicines, but doing maybe some integration, like with a therapist, but not integrating this path into their work. And I used to live in New York City, where it's just kind of this cutthroat work environment, and it's like very go, go, go. And people had these careers that were making them miserable, and they would just keep coming back to the medicine to feel better. And I just saw this disconnect between working with medicine and the integration into your work, your business, your career. And that's kind of when, I was already coaching people, but I started getting, some clients that worked with medicines, and they would bring up their ceremonies, or they would bring up visions or experience. And we would start to do the integration into what are the steps they're taking on their path, whether it's a career or business or their purpose, or, even as an executive or a leader out there. And I had just, I kind of just fell into this by speaking more about my own path. This was a huge part of my own path as someone who had started 3 businesses and made a lot of career changes. When I was working with medicines, of course, they had a huge impact in the decisions I was making and where I was going when it came to business and career, and even showing up as a leader or an executive when I worked for other people. So that's kind of how I fell into this. And, it was a conversation, at least many years ago, where a few people were talking about the integration of what might even be causing all this depression and anxiety in our society. So people were looking to microdose to feel better, but they weren't really addressing maybe if you have a job or a career or even a business that's misaligned, that's making you unhappy, well, maybe we should get to the root and start to deal with that. And that's kind of how this all came into place, especially, I've been working with these medicines for about 30 years, since I was quite young. And yeah, they've had a huge impact on pretty much every aspect of my life, whether I tried to or not. It just, that's what integration is. So that's how this all came about, and this is what I offer now.
How has psychedelics, I guess, yeah, informed you or really influenced you in the business world? And I want to get into maybe kind of the other aspects, business, money, psychedelics.
Yeah.
Seems very controversial. But first, I want to hear a little bit how that's maybe shifted some of your beliefs on how you show up or how, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I love the controversial topics because I'm not a big fan of spiritual bypass. And I do believe that we have to talk about these kind of edgier topics that are also very real. We can't deny that there's money and work. They say that we spend, a quarter of our life working. And I was, your typical American that's like raised in a family that was programmed where it was like you go to college and you get a job and you just stay there as long as you can. So you make good money and get stocks and whatever. And, even as a young kid, I knew this wasn't really my path, but this was how I was raised. It was like, just like go the secure route. I come from that generation where my parents were like, just stick with the secure route of like, get a job at a company. But I had taken acid at 14 years old for the first time. And I will never forget that first trip. It was just, and I kind of knew this inherently even before then, because I remember noticing that something seemed wrong with the programming. But during that first acid trip, I just knew that there was more to life. I knew that I wasn't getting the full story from my parents or teachers or the programming around me. And I knew I could really, go in any direction. Of course, I still went the safe route because it was kind of like I just had those kind of parents and, I didn't really know anything else. So I went to college and I got a corporate job and did the thing. But I was still, doing a lot of, back then we did not call them medicines. They were just called drugs. I was doing a lot of drugs and partying and, it wasn't even, it was just called ecstasy back then and acid. And, but I was doing all the things, also leading this pretty, good, secure corporate life. And there was just this part of me that knew that this wasn't for me. I also, in my constitution, being very kind of outspoken and not really going with the flow of authority all the time, I just knew that lifestyle wasn't for me, to just be a peon in the cog in the wheel. So I think my theory is that working with psychedelics just kept waking me up more and more to what I really wanted. And I think this is what it really does. I mean, that's part of the soul journey. And I do believe also, hey, if some people are truly passionate about their job as a corporate attorney, like the psychedelics are not going to tell you to then go be, like the Trump turning into a shaman. I don't think he's on that path, So it's that same thing where it's like, I think these medicines help you dig deeper. I was also one of these kind of people that always dug deeper. I was originally on the path to being a therapist. So I was always very, self-development, well-studied, got into meditation at kind of a young age and started questioning everything and questioning like, well, what do I really want? And then, just a series of events which also coincided with certain, what I would say, like different levels of spiritual emergence. I would get laid off and then I would have this big spiritual kind of, I hate to use the word awakening, but, like a next level of emergence and some kind of awareness. And, it just got to the point of like, well, if I don't at least go try to do what's really living inside of me, I'll never know. And by the way, this is through like multiple recessions. Like I got laid off during one of the earlier recessions and it was like, well, okay, this is a good time to explore, so, and then the next thing, next thing it was step by step, things started opening up. And then at the same time, it was like, okay, I went deeper with certain psychedelics. I got, into ayahuasca, the medicine along with the integration work really helped me believe in the truth of what was living inside of me, what was coming through me, what was, I always say it's like, my soul was pulling me in a direction and I really just listened to it. So that's where I think it's not just the medicines. I very rarely got that like epiphany image that showed me like, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing. But I've gotten little bits of those. I've had some moments that were like, wow, what would it be like if that was real? But I didn't just like quit everything and go do it. I took the steps. I got some support. I did the integration work. And then what happened is, whatever it was, a few years later, I look back and I'm like, wow, wait, this is similar to that vision.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't even think about it. I'm actually going through that now. Like I had a vision quest, no medicine, just prayers on the earth, in a traditional vision quest that showed me something I'd be doing in the future. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like that sounds fun. And then now I can start to feel it like awakening and birthing through me. So it's not just medicines, by the way. It's not just psychedelics. It's like any of these non-ordinary states where you really quiet down and actually can go inward and listen, and then do the integration with the steps, maybe with some guidance and the curiosity, which is something I teach big in my programs with my clients, is like, this isn't about throwing everything away or having to give up, the worldly life and not have money. It's about just getting curious and start to take some steps. It costs nothing. It takes very little effort. And the more you're kind of in this conversation with your soul, it starts to unfold and emerge in a way that maybe it's like, as they say, a lot of this is cliche, but
Yeah.
you didn't know it was going to turn out like this. I didn't know this is what I'd be doing. I
had no idea. I was just talking to a friend the other day. I'm like, I had no idea I would be here. This is so weird.
Exactly. And then like throw the psychedelic piece in. I'm like, God, little did I know at age 14 when I was tripping by myself for 8 hours straight, that it would be this huge part of my life. But
Yeah, I really resonate with some of the things that you're saying, especially about the piece of like, this doesn't always need to be psychedelic related, right? It can come in dreams. Like my most profound thing came from a breathwork experience, and then, not needing to necessarily work through it. I guess I was working through it like subtly, and then I got there. I was like, whoa, what the hell? Like my teacher reminded me like, oh, you should go back to that mandala that you did. Like, you're kind of doing what you kind of put down like a couple years ago. I was like, oh, that's really fascinating. But this topic of like soul calling, whatever we want to call it, like, do you believe that everybody has one? And, something else that you brought up is like, maybe just don't quit your job, but people do sometimes have these big insights and then they don't know how to even start that process. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I've kind of toyed with the word purpose. It's like there's a lot of people looking for this purpose. And the way I believe is like, it all comes back to presence. Like when you're just present, and it doesn't mean don't have any visions of the future or dream or, visualize what you want. But when you're really in tune with the present and doing this inner work to really listen to like, okay, well, what feels right? What feels good? What feels like really like, and right in a truthful way, not in an ego-based way of like, well, the medicine told me I should be a shaman. This is like become a meme in the industry now. Yeah. But when you really tune in and maybe start getting curious and talk to people and explore this path, yeah, you might realize like, oh, actually, maybe that was just my ego. Or maybe that was this part of me that's like not really real. But, if you're, and I say, it's like, if you're truly called to be a shaman, like you will know it, but it's not an overnight thing, right? It's many, many years process. And it's kind of the same thing with anything else. It's like, you might have a big experience. I mean, I've had a numerous amount of these big experiences that kind of showed me like, go do this. But thankfully, I've always been the kind of person that's like, is that real? Is it not? Like, and so that's where the curiosity comes in, is like, you can share about it in the integration circle the next day. You can talk about it with your friends. You can explore it with your coach, your therapist. And that's where the little steps start, is just to start speaking it into reality and listening to it and feeling. And I think I've talked about this a lot, about our world is just so fast paced and there's so many people moving along, and now there's just every distraction possible, and the distractions are always, it's like getting worse every day. But if we just make time to really go inward at least once a day for 20 minutes, have some kind of a practice, or at least, get some support with an integration coach to bounce these ideas off of, then it starts the process of the emergence. So I do believe on some level, I'm putting this in air quotes here, the soul has its path. For some people, that path might be you've come here to raise a family and make things beautiful in your household, and that's it. And there's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong. And I always remind my clients and anybody that comes to any of my workshops, not everybody's here to save the world, right? I think a lot of people who work with me are called to make a difference and give back, especially what I find is people who've been on the medicine path for a long time, or people who've been doing a lot of their own inner work. Yeah, there is a point where it's like, okay, you can get beyond just you. Like, it's not just you anymore. It really never was.
Yeah.
But it's like there's a way to give back and to be of service. And I think what I've seen is, it is kind of an interesting correlation. A lot of people who have worked with medicines or people who've had these big, profound spiritual experiences very often get to a point where it's like, okay, there's more it's not just about me and being happier. It's like, how do I help others? Which then, it does serve, it's kind of like therapy 101, right? It's like, there's always an exchange, it's not just about being of service. It's like, of course you get something back out of it. As long as you have, there's a certain level of like your own trauma patterns that are being worked out there. That's a whole other conversation. But I do believe every soul comes here for a reason. And I think for some people it's whatever, make art, be a chef, raise a family. It doesn't have to even be connected to your career. But I do think if there's people that are regularly working with these non-ordinary states and starting to have these kind of other things come up, or these other ideas or awarenesses, that's where it's like the integration piece of it is really important to see what emerges.
Yeah. Something you said, just like thinking about the difference between like soul, ego, and purpose, like how do people really, I guess, discern what is ego versus like soul purpose? Because I think that's a really interesting question. It's like I've definitely grappled with like, what is ego? This is actually calling to me. Like, am I just doing this for an egoic reason, or am I doing this because something's actually like kind of calling me down this path? So I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts. Like, how do you help like your clients discern that?
Yeah. And here's the thing. Let's just name that the ego is not bad, right?
Right.
This word has been like bastardized in our society so much, and then you throw it in with like politics. But every human being has an ego. It's here. It's actually a good thing. It's keeping you alive, right? On some level. But when I use it in this way, it's like, the discernment between like what is true versus maybe what is coming from a less true place, which, for people who've done, this is where I say like, get help, get support. But for people who understand like their own, patterns, like their trauma patterns, or some need that's trying to be fulfilled that's not maybe coming from this kind of truth of like, oh, this feels like it's really alive for me and it's really true, like this is what I'm here to do. And I think for some people maybe they do walk in both. It's like on some level I do believe if you look at some of the great leaders of the world, people accuse a lot of them as like, well, they just want to be famous because of their ego. And maybe that's okay, if they're doing good heart-centered work and they're making a big difference, and they actually enjoy, being a leader with a lot of followers and being famous and popular, like maybe that's okay, that's just their thing. It doesn't make them good or bad. So I think it's kind of just distinguishing what is coming from a place of like, this is really what you're here to do next, versus what are the reasons why you're doing it? I mean, I think in the psychedelic space, I think it was very enticing for a lot of people to think, wow, I can make all this money just by giving people mushrooms and sitting with them with a playlist. Yeah, I mean, even I've been like, wow, maybe I chose the wrong part of this. I mean, I do space holding here and there, but not like, I don't make the majority of my income from, $1,500 to $2,500 a pop sessions. And I can see where that sounds very enticing to people. But then, we were talking about this before the interview, then there's people that maybe go through that and realize like, you know what? I don't actually like this, or it's not really fulfilling me, or I thought I was helping, but I'm actually not really at this skill level to hold this kind of space, or whatever it is. And that's where there's this discernment of like, what is really true for you versus like, what are the reasons why you're doing it? I mean, I've had people come to me and say, I want to grow my health coaching business. And the reason they got into this was because they're just really into, their own health. Usually they've had their own health crisis along the way that sparked this kind of career into like wanting to help other people. But through the process of growth, and this is why I believe that purpose it's just an ever-present evolution of who you are and who you become. It's not like somewhere to get to. But very often they'll explore, or they'll dive into their growing their business, or put work in, and they'll realize, usually in one way or another, like whether it's through working with clients or like a lot of people, I've seen this happen where they just kind of randomly, quote unquote, get clients looking maybe for more, I don't know, embodiment work. So then they're doing health and wellness and embodiment work. And then they realize, oh, wow, I really love this part of it much more than this other part. I have a client that's like, I won't give any of my clients recipes. And she does health and wellness and functional medicine work. And she's like, no, I won't give people recipes. So she's doing, it's like she's following what she likes and what she believes is really necessary. But it's like, she doesn't attract the kind of people that just want someone who tells them what to eat. So it's kind of this process, but it's like anything. Like you'll only know by actually doing it. You have to have the lived, embodied, experiential feelings to know like, oh, this is what I enjoy. This is what feels more right for me. And this is just, to me, it's a never-ending process of growth,
Yeah. Do you see any challenges with some of your clients that you work with, like trying to integrate their experiences into their life purpose or their businesses? Like, what are some hangups that people typically express to you?
Yeah, I see those a lot. And I do get the clients. It's like, I mean, I had someone last year where it was like, iboga showed me exactly what this and this and this and this, and then it was, iboga didn't really show her exactly all the steps to take. It's like you might have had this vision, but then there was still this level of like stuckness for a while. Usually what I found is it's deeply rooted in something beyond just like marketing yourself or writing emails or starting a podcast. Usually it's, I think, and I do believe this has gotten worse the last few years, but people being scared of the internet, or what will people think? What will people say? Am I good enough? Like, am I qualified to do this? I mean, I know you guys have seen it with your own Vital participants, because I've heard them say it, where it's like, and I think it's a good thing actually to just be questioning like, okay, like, and this is what I teach is like, know your boundaries. Like, I do believe on some level, every human can help another human. I've had people say like, just, oh, a 21-year-old shouldn't be coaching. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Can a 21-year-old coach someone who's maybe that 21-year-old went through something and now this 32-year-old's going through it? Like, who's to say they can't help them, just because
there's that
age.
argument in like, fresh grad school, like students, right? Like getting out and then providing therapy to somebody that's like in their 60s and they're like, 25, right? It's like,
and it's hard. But then I also say like, all of us know, I'm pretty sure everybody listening has been to one bad doctor or a bad dentist or even a bad therapist. So let's say a doctor, doctors had 12 years of school or more, and then internships, and maybe even the doctor's been in practice for 25, 30 years, and you go and it was like a terrible experience, and maybe even malpractice. I mean, maybe even, death on the operating table. And it's kind of like, well, who's to say who's good or bad or what's right or wrong, And I do think there is a certain level of, mastery over many years experience. And we've also seen people that are, there's great, brilliant leaders that are, half my age that are doing great work out there. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it just comes back to, I believe imposter syndrome and that kind of, lack of belief in oneself or lack of confidence or what will people think. I really believe that affects everybody at every level. Like I've seen this, they say it's like CEOs have imposter syndrome.
I still do sometimes. Yeah. And I always point back to this interview we did with Matt Johnson. He started off saying that. Like I was recording with him at Science, and he's like, people are asking me all these questions I don't know, And I'm like, you're the most prestigious academic in this field, And it's like, that's helpful, It reminds us that we all go through this at times.
Yeah.
Right?
Human. Yeah. And just, I always say and this comes back to slowing down and going inward and having, by the way, I really do believe in supervision. I personally, I think it should be a requirement in the psychedelic space. Like have supervision, have a mentor, have, a coach, someone. But if you have that space to slow down and know yourself, you'll know your limits. Like I always say, look, I'm a business coach, but if someone came to me with their complex PTSD and something just happened and they needed help, I always say, have your resource list. Like I have a whole entire slew of resources. I'm not fully trained to help someone with CPTSD. So, even though I actually know more than most business coaches would know, I still always refer people out. Like, okay, hey, this is at my limit of what I'm comfortable holding or what I feel like I should be holding. So let me give you to someone who I know and trust. And so I think that's where it's like, everybody's going to be stopped along the way, but it's a matter of like, are you going to let this stop you for, 3 more years or 5 more years or maybe even the rest of your life? Or are you going to just work with where you are and what you have? Like, and if Matt Johnson is saying, hey, he feels like an imposter sometimes, then it's like all of us.
That was just like a humbling conversation to have. It's like, okay, yeah, we're all human, right? We all deal with these thoughts, and that's okay. But I think something you're hinting towards, it's like if we don't take the first step, we'll never get there, right? And taking that first step, even though we might not know everything, it's still important. Otherwise, we're just going to be stuck, right? It's like, and I do hear this, people always say, am I ready? How do you know when you're ready to make those steps? And sometimes you make, maybe it's a baby step, right? And I think what you're highlighting too is staying within scope of practice is really important. That's going to keep you maybe where you are, where your specialties are, instead of thinking you can take on everything, you can do X, Y, and Z. Start with baby steps, stay within your scope, know what you actually can and can't do. And I think that's a really important reminder.
Yeah. And especially, by the way, in the healing space, or probably maybe more especially in the psychedelic space of this, people feel like, oh, I just want to help everybody, yeah, I can heal people, which, by the way, this is where ego comes in, right? I actually don't believe anybody is here to heal someone. I believe the way I approach with my clients is I'm here to empower you to go inward, to know yourself more, to actually be able to guide yourself. I really, truly believe the day of the guru is over. And I've had some amazing healers work on me over the years. And, the guy I work with in the jungle of Peru, but, even he would say, it's not me, and I think there's a lot of that projection. And I think there's a lot of fear when people are stepping into a new role as a therapist or a coach or a healer or a facilitator, where they think I'm now responsible to fix people. And you're not. That's one of the things I actually have to teach a lot of my clients is you're only holding space is holding space. It's not your job or your duty to provide, cures or results or answers. It's you're just guiding people holding that space for them to grow, like through their evolution. You know, no one's going to I always say no one's going to like get fixed tomorrow and become the next ascended master.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I know of, but
it's that cliche, right? It's like you can lead a horse to water, but can't make him drink it, right? I think Louis Mel Madrona, either in his book Narrative Medicine or Coyote Medicine, I forget which one it was, but you know, he kind of highlights this like shamanism. He's like, you know, 75% of it is the creator, the universe, however you want to define that, God. You know, 20% is your relationship to that. And then the 5% is the shaman that just tricks you into believing that you have a relationship with the creator, God, the universe, right? And it's like, yeah, it's like, that's an interesting way, because sometimes we forget that the healing is inside of us. And sometimes we do need somebody to remind us that, oh yes, I can have a relationship with whatever is around me, however you want to define that.
Yeah, agree completely.
Yeah. Important stuff. I would love to chat a little bit about, like, maybe we'll get into maybe these shadowy aspects. I feel like whenever we chat, we always talk about these stuff. You know, money, psychedelics, huge kind of controversy at times, right? People don't know how to approach it. But the reality is that we live in a world that, you know, money kind of runs things. And I think people have a really hard time with this. It's like, you know, trying to run a business, trying to make money to, you know, pay your bills, your rent, whatever it is, family, but then also doing maybe healing work. How do we approach this?
This is one of my favorite topics, because it's been so alive for, I mean, so many people, but just even my own personal journey with this. I will first acknowledge that probably like a lot of listeners, it's like, it is hard. Like, I totally don't agree with the way the world is. I mean, it's like capitalism is pretty messed up right now. I would say that the root of a lot of the world's problems do stem back to money. So that's like the number one conundrum, right? By the way, I don't hate money at all. And I actually like am very, just aware of like the system that we're in and where it's at right now, and having to accept and work within it. But I think it's really important to acknowledge, and especially because there's so many people that are like really truly acknowledging like, well, wait a second, this whole notion that people maybe have to pay, you know, $2,000 to get some psychedelic healing. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It really is. I think, I mean, if in a perfect world, I personally wish it were all free too. But then there's just, and this is where I've been saying for a few years, we can't bypass. It's like spiritual bypass to pretend that, you know, a shaman or a facilitator or a curandera from wherever, doesn't matter where they live, they still need money. And I will start by saying, you know, the one of the very first things that comes up is like, well, if you're working with someone who's an indigenous so-and-so in wherever, Peru, Brazil, etc., then, you know, money. And I'm like, I don't know. So far, I have been to multiple indigenous communities, and I've worked with a lot of elders around the world, and no one is fully living off the land. Like, I have yet to hear a story of like someone I know working with someone who's completely living without money. It's like, even in the most remote areas I've been to, they still have gasoline that they have to buy. Like, I'll start, but you know, because it's like, let's get real. They're like, there's they use boats that are motorized. They have to have gas for that, and then they have like a tuk-tuk or a motorcycle. So it's like, there's so much to it. It's not just like, get back to the indigenous ways of living off the land. We are, especially us, we're recording this in America in modern day 2024, and money is here, and it is just part of our world. So that's like the first step we have to just acknowledge, and whether we like it or not, we have to acknowledge it. And then, you know, then there's the reality as a facilitator, someone working in this space, a therapist. This space, it isn't like you just give someone some mushrooms and then you're done an hour later. You know, I know there's companies working on that. Yeah. Which scares me, but that's just not the reality. I mean, even with some of the quickest medicines like ketamine, I have talked to multiple people where it's like, oh yeah, I have these hours scheduled, but we always go over. Because you're not going to just leave your client because the 3 hours is up or whatever it is. You're going to serve them. So there's a lot of time and energy. There's also the inherent risk. There's also, a lot of energetic and other factors that people never even think about, like how much time someone is taking to set up the space, how much do they put into curating music, or even, by the way, even learning music and playing music live. I mean, that's a
whole
real
thing in itself.
Yeah, it's a real, people take that for granted, by the way. It's like, thankfully, I've been around a lot of master musicians, and I've played for people live, and I'm not even a master, but it's like people forget it's like every instrument costs money. You're developing your craft takes time. Learning new songs is like dedicated time. And in this world, it's like, if you're setting aside these many hours, those are hours that you could be doing X, Y, and Z, maybe making money. So, there's a lot to factor in, and it's interesting. There was a lot of backlash when, organ legalization came out, and there was like, one of my clients, actually, my former client, helped open one of Oregon's first psilocybin service centers. And when she had told me a lot of the back end, like behind the scenes and what went into it, and the regulations and the lawyers and the reading materials alone, I was like,
crazy. Yeah.
And additionally, and I personally always recommend this. Like, I think in my personal opinion, most facilitators should not be working alone. So then there's another person, or maybe even two people. Which, by the way, at least last I knew, is part of the Oregon regulation, where it's not just a one-on-one session. It's like 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. So then, this all drives up costs, because the reality is human beings need to live. I mean, and we all know, like, the prices are not going down. Hopefully they will, but I doubt they will, because
Fingers
they've only
crossed.
been going up.
Yeah.
So to me, the way I teach my clients is about trying to get the balance right. Like really tuning into, first of all, knowing your own values. Like, I have some clients that are like, look, I want to make this accessible for my community, and I'm going to only charge, a few, $200. And then I'm going to balance it by, those who can't afford it pay more, or I'm going to start a scholarship fund, or maybe I have some private clients that are, very abundant, that don't mind paying $5,000, $10,000, even we've all heard these stories of like 15, 20, whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
And maybe there's people that are truly in need that can only afford $100. And this is where I've built this into my business from day one. I give a lot of free content. I give, free workshops. I do some free coaching, and then I have every price in between. And so this is what I teach to my clients, is like how to align with your own values. I mean, once in a while, I do have a client that's like, fuck it, I'm just going to charge this huge amount and I don't even care. That's actually rare. I haven't had that in a few years, but most people try to, balance. And I think that's most people I've interviewed over the years in the space are trying to figure out, like, how do we make this accessible yet also make a good living? Because here's the other thing is, as a space holder or whatever, coach, doesn't matter, you have to reinvest into yourself, your business, your own training. I mean, I'm in 2 trainings right now, and they're not cheap, and I'll probably be in them for the next year and a half. And so, of course, money I make doesn't just go onto I don't have a yacht. It's not like, I think most of us, and I know you guys are entrepreneurs, it's like we are constantly reinvesting into the business, creating free content, and it's kind of like a catch-22. I always tell people, I'm like, I don't actually make that much money in the end, because it's all just like,
it gets reinvested.
Yeah, it's back in, and
operation costs are sometimes really high.
And then being able to serve at a higher level. Like, I've had clients who are like, okay, I started with doing one-on-one sessions in this space, and one of my clients actually just invested in a house to do a psychedelic therapy in with another person. So it's like, okay, these little steps, but it's, that costs money. So I just think we need to have these conversations. It's been interesting. I interviewed someone once a year and a half or 2 years ago where we talked about money, and then they asked me to remove it from the interview. And I thought that was kind of funny because it was someone who actually is out there with training programs. I was like, well, that's interesting because you're making money and you're giving people training where then they're going to go out and hopefully make their living with this. So it's like, why are we not talking about it?
Why do you think it's so taboo in this field? Like, I wonder if other fields or communities, however we want to define this thing, like, I wonder like if this has been a big thing, say in like the yoga communities and field, right? Like, has this been a big conversation, or is it because psychedelics just amplify things so much? It's like, this is it.
Totally. And I'll say poor yoga, because yoga, again, everybody knows like if yoga centers are often not profitable, and it's a struggle for a lot of yoga centers. But I think it probably affects most, especially these wellness industries where there's a lot of, it's like I've seen this, for, I don't know, since day one. It's like, oh, I'm spiritual and I don't need the money. I'm not in it for the money. And I always remind people, of course, I'm not in this for the money either. But yes, I also do want to make money and I do need to live and I do need to pay the same bills as everybody else. So we can't be in la la land, and pretend that this doesn't exist. I mean, we can go see, there's pockets of people, I'm sure all of us have met people around the world that live like that. And, I've had friends live like that. And the quality of life it's not serving them. And it's definitely not serving at a higher level the planet and the change we want to see on the earth. You struggling alone on a mountaintop, like barely getting by, and not able to actually serve people because you're really just struggling, that's not of service to you or anybody else. But I think it is because we're in this space that's, like dedicated to this greater vision of, at least this is me and most of my clients. It's like we all want to see a different world. We all want people to have access to healing. We do want people to be happier. I've had clients over the years, I've had multiple clients deal with people with suicidal ideation who did not kill themselves. And that's huge. It's like we're helping save lives on so many levels, that's like not to say everybody is, but I think there's this dedication we all have to something bigger. And it is hard. I struggle with it myself. Like, I haven't raised my rates in years. And according to most business coaches, like if I had a kind of like a typical like bro-y marketing business coach, they would be yelling at me for how much I undercharge. They'd be like, why isn't your program 50 grand?
Right.
It's not aligned with who I am. So even I struggle with this. It's like, I want to serve. I just want to help people. And I think that really affects a lot of people in these kind of transformational spaces. And I do think, psychedelics gets very messy because we're dealing with, at least so far, some of these plants that grow on the earth or, in your box in your house somewhere. They're plants. So far, no one really owns them, even though there's patents, and I always say it's like, if we're going to talk about the money, I really think the energy should be directed at like the venture capital money and like the larger multiple millions that are being poured into this psychedelic industry. And the people that are trying to patent, psilocybin strains or create versions of LSD that don't make you trip or whatever it is, like ayahuasca that doesn't make you throw up. I've heard everything.
Well, but some of those I get, from clinical perspective. Like LSD that you don't trip for cluster headaches, wonderful.
That would be great.
Right? Like for folks that might need to tolerate pain but don't want to be tripping all the time. I get it. Like, but I think it's like the motivation behind it, right? Totally. It's like, is this just a play to make, millions, billions of dollars, or are we actually really just into it to help people? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like everything in the world, it's like, who's to say what's right or wrong or good or bad? A lot of people are just up in arms over like VCs, money, etc. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think all of them are bad. I think if we do figure out a way to help people heal or, devise something where, like someone's able to I don't know, figure out the cure for Alzheimer's completely because of, LSD research. Hey, and, if that means like taking LSD that doesn't make you trip, I have no problem with that. Or, if there's some reason why people need a plant, yeah. But I think it's hard. I think that's where the money conversation has been very hard because, the first year I ran my summit in 2019, psychedelics, sacred medicines and purpose, I had someone write me and say like, medicines should be free because they're from the earth. Like, who are you to do this? And of course, the person completely misunderstood what I was even doing. But I was like, wow, that's really interesting for anyone that's grown their own mushrooms or,
Cannabis,
I've made,
right? Like, that's expensive.
Expensive, labor intensive, time and energy. Making ayahuasca is the one I use as an example all the time. I'm like, oh my God, it is so extremely labor intensive to get your little cup of tea that's this big. I mean, there's no way these the people I've been around like that are making it, they're paid to make it because there's no way that one guy would be able to make it. Like it's so labor intensive. And then, if you're actually harvesting it sustainably, the people I work with actually grow it in a way where it's regenerative and it's not just being yanked out of the jungle, which is a whole other issue. So, this is where I think we just need to talk about it and try to, and I really encourage people, I know people have tried to bring this into the medicine space, but if you have the means financially, like, yeah, pay a little bit more and give back to a scholarship fund or a nonprofit that's doing work in, the lineage that you're sitting with. And I don't care if it's you're taking acid or, drinking ayahuasca or what, like there's always a way to give back in some way. So I think those are the larger conversations.
Yeah. And that's going to feel pretty rewarding when you can give back in that way. I think some of the reality too is, as you were mentioning, like we aren't living off the land. We aren't in community. I remember a number of years ago, there was this whole fiasco in this Facebook group where these organizers were trying to bring some grandmothers up to Vermont, and everybody was like, ceremony should be free. Like, what are you doing? I can't believe you're charging for this. Like, just really attacking the organizers. And the organizers are like, well, we have to pay for their plane tickets. We have to pay for their lodging, their food. And if this is something that you're interested in, it's like a contribution to help them get here. Right. And I mean, the reality is that we don't live in communities anymore. Like even I think in, cultures where traditional healing happened, there was an exchange, right? It's like I brought a chicken, I brought tobacco, I brought whatever that is. Right. And in the community where, you're not having to pay, a lease or a mortgage for that land, your survival needs are kind of met to some degree. And then this is helping out. And the reality is like, we just don't live in that world anymore. And so, how do we, I guess, like get past romanticizing and drop into like the present moment? Because I think a lot of it is, it's really romanticizing. And I've been caught up in it, in my early years, I'm like, arguing the same thing. And then reality kicks in, right? It's like, wow, I'm not making that much money. I'm broke. I'm not filling my cup. I can't serve other people. How sustainable is that? Then what type of mindset do you get into? And it takes a little bit of a mindset shift. And so I'm sure you work with a lot of mindset shifts. And so how do you approach that with clients that do have this blockage or this stuckness around this topic?
Yeah, it's huge. And I will quote someone I've worked with over the years who I think it was 4 or 5 years ago was going out to a Sundance in South Dakota or southern North Dakota and said, asked their community for donations, monetary donations, and said, look, tobacco doesn't put gas in the tank. Like these are, elders living here in America where even if they live on a reservation, even if they're living in communities,
right? Yeah, it's not a good quality of life.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, like so far, even being like deep in the jungle of Peru, like these guys are using motorboats, and they still have housing. They're not sleeping on the floor of the jungle getting bitten by tarantulas. So, Yeah, I mean, this is where I work with my clients to be really empowered by their own values. And like I said, like most of my clients have similar values. Once in a while, there's someone that's like, fuck it, I just want the money. Again, I haven't had that in over 4 years. But I really believe in bringing reciprocity into your business from day one. And it doesn't mean you have to even give money away. I mean, a lot of newer entrepreneurs are just trying to make their own ends meet. So think about, well, how can you do things for free? How can you create content? How do you deliver a workshop that's maybe either free or donation based? Like there's always a way to give and be of service, even if there's nothing coming back from it. You're still giving. And so that way you are serving, you know, the people that say like they don't have money to pay for your services. And I think when it comes to actually accepting money, oh yeah, we do some really deep work around that as well. The way I teach, because I've actually known business coaches personally who you sign up for their program, you get in there and they teach you, which is, by the way, kind of true. It's essentially true on some level. They say, and I say this to my clients, technically it's the same amount of time, energy, and effort to sell something for $50,000 as it is for $500. If you stop and think about it, it kind of takes the exact effort. So there are people out there that teach like, just go for the 50 grand. I've never agreed with that. First of all, there's people's nervous systems. Like if I told a new entrepreneur, you know, you're new, you should just go ask for 50 grand because then, you know, you'll make half your year's income with just one client. No one would be able to handle that. Very few people. Their nervous systems would just fry. They would never be able to open their mouth and ask for 50 grand. So they don't, and they can't. So what I do is I work with my clients like at their comfort level. Like, okay, stop and I have them take an assessment of their life. Like, okay, stop and think about how much would you like? Very often my clients come in saying, I just want to replace my current income or replace my income of when I was a teacher or when I was a nurse or whatever it was, you know, or I get a lot of clients that are body workers or acupuncturists, people who already have businesses and maybe they're shifting or adding a new service. And they're like, you know, honestly, most of my clients just want to be happier and more fulfilled. They're not totally driven by the money, even though, you know, deep inside, everybody needs the money. And I think it's really about like listening to what feels good. And then, you know, this is where the curiosity comes in. Like, you know, ask like what would feel right to you? What would feel good? Here's the thing. There's also the double-edged sword with undercharging, you know, and especially even psychedelic space. Like I personally don't know if I would trust someone who wanted $50 a person for a ceremony. You know, I'd be like, are you new? Are you just experimenting on us? Like, why is this so cheap? Like I would actually be a little concerned because that's way below what I've been paying since day one. So I have seen this over years where some clients that are healers or coaches maybe undercharge and then people skip out on appointments. They don't show up. They don't take it seriously. I mean, you guys probably know this as well. It's like on a certain level, like what I have found is like people need some skin in the game to really show up and take things seriously. I mean, I know I've invested, how many people, I'm sure there's listeners, how many people have bought an online course that costs $20?
Me, never taken it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if that online course was like, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000,
I'd be showing up.
You would do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also that, and also think about your client. You know, it's like, who are you actually serving? You know, I have some clients that have come from, you know, maybe certain communities and certain worlds where it's like, I don't know, if you're doing executive coaching, working with, you know, high level CEOs, like they almost, it's kind of that same thing where they have a certain expectation. If you charged $75 a session, they might not even be interested. So there's kind of, which, you know, again, is kind of the rare case, but it's this combination of really navigating like what feels good to you, what is it you want, what would also serve people, what's not too low, what's not too high, and also because there's a lot of criticism just out there in the kind of coaching industry about people who charge so much money, and you know, the way I feel, because I know I've worked with coaches. I haven't paid for this myself, but I had a coach once who had private coaching for like $100,000. And I was like, well, I wouldn't do that because I have a lot of other things I'd rather spend $100,000 on. But I actually just didn't think anything was wrong with it. I was like, well, if her clients make $5 or $10 million and $100,000 to them is nothing, like maybe it's okay. Like, who am I to say that that's wrong? Not my vibe. It's kind of not my thing.
But it probably takes a certain level of person to want to work with those clients to begin with, exactly. Right? Like that's not like, yeah.
Well, and someone else in the psychedelic space said something recently about integration coaches charging, whatever it was, $4,000 for 6 months. And, this person was kind of like critiquing whatever it is, like coaching packages or, like programs. And then what was ironic and interesting to me is this person is someone that charges, $3,000 to $6,000 for like, medicine retreats. So then it's like, well, who's to say there's more value in drinking ayahuasca 3 times versus a 6-month integration program, It's
a really interesting question. Like, what is value and how do people place value on things, right? Like, as you're talking, it just got me thinking about like my undergrad, which was really expensive. But I'd say that was money well spent because of like the connections it made. It was really about like my own personal transformation. And I'm like, I could have went like a cheaper route, but I'm like, that was money well spent because the program allowed me to go into this like deep transformation, which I needed. And I wouldn't have gotten that if I went to like just like a regular state school or whatever that is. Right. And it's like, yeah. So it's like, what is value and how do we place value on things?
Yeah, and it's a strange thing because it's like, well, okay, there's a value for, I don't know, psychedelic therapy, but then there's not a value for integration work, which, by the way, I have now heard a few stories of some of these retreat centers where they used to include integration and have an integration staff member. They've actually just cut out integration because they don't value it. And it's like, well, wait a second. People are paying $10,000 to go do whatever, mushrooms in Jamaica, and it's like they're investing all this time, money, and energy into this transformation, but then, you don't think that that's important. I mean, it's interesting. The person that was critiquing integration programs is someone that offers, medicine that costs the same exact or even more money. So I was like, there's something to that seems very interesting. And I think the one thing I've seen, I think all of us might agree, is a lot of times people in the psychedelic space put so much more value on the actual psychedelic experience versus like the overall result, which includes, preparation, integration, and maybe even like work beyond that.
And I think, yeah. And I mean, having experience is easy, right? Like, and I think in our culture, especially the way that like media has covered a lot of psychedelics, it's like, silver bullet, you have one session or a few sessions, you're cured. And a lot of people are willing to spend that money on that, I think, because it will offer that transformation, how people are talking about it. But again, like I'll use my undergrad as an example, where it was like, I already had so much of this like psychedelic experiences, and I needed a place to like go to like intellectually explore myself and have a program that was so experientially oriented. And again, it was like, I spent that money on pretty much my integration. Like looking back, I didn't know that then, but looking back now, I'm like, that was my integration program. Like I really, really needed that to ground myself, to find myself, because, those earlier experiences really blew me out of the water. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a really just important message to keep, reiterating that, maybe the work is tough. We don't want to do it, right? I mean, maybe that is the thing about integration. It's like, do I really want to do this stuff? But like, that is the ongoing process that we do need to pay attention to. And I get it. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. It's work, but.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, what I teach, like the clients of mine that come to me, especially people who are already working as a facilitator or a therapist, they come to me because they realize, not all of them, but many of them have realized that it's hard. It's hard work. It's not super sustainable. It's not really scalable, even though they're not looking to scale into this big company, but scale as in leveraging your time. And so what I've been teaching is a certain way to bring in, the reality of like the psychedelic experience doesn't fix anybody anyways. I wish it did, but it doesn't do the instant healing like people think it does. So you need to have more of that, whether it's, therapy or somatic work or embodiment work, whatever it is, it's more than just that one experience. It's more than just going on the one retreat with 3 ceremonies. It has to be this guidance that gives you the results that you're looking for, or else then it just becomes another one of these business models where it's like, go to a ceremony, go to another one, go to another one, go on a retreat, go on another retreat. And after a few retreats and, you're spending $20,000, you're going to realize like, oh, it's interesting. I've gone on 4 of her retreats, but nothing's changed. And I think people are starting to realize that, like, oh, well, I thought these psychedelics would cure me and they didn't. So maybe I should start getting other help, and that's where I think, people are finally, I think the people who are working with medicines are going out there and getting help. I think it's just kind of funny that, the critique was coming from psychedelic integration coaches versus, people running $5,000 medicine work, retreats and ceremonies.
Yeah. I'm sure you're probably in a bit of a bubble with your clients. I'm probably obviously in a bit of a bubble too, but like thinking about coming back to this soul purpose thing, right? And it's like, we can have multiple experiences, maybe clear trauma out, but like, yeah, does this come back to, getting to the core root of like, how am I showing up in my life? And how do I start working towards that? And that is challenging and scary too, right? So like you mentioned, there's been times in your life where things just kind of like, lost a job, right? And maybe it encouraged you to take a leap of faith. But like, I think for a lot of people that might have these like deep experiences, that's fucking terrifying to like make a leap of faith like that and start something new, right? So it's like, how much, courage does it take to actually start walking this path after a ceremony? And how do we help people with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy. I mean, this is why, I always say like, don't do it alone. Very often I do get clients who've been in business or trying to do this on their own for a few years. And then they kind of get to this breaking point of like, it's exhausting trying to just figure it out, and maybe things are working or not working. And then there's always like the fear of like financials and am I going to get clients? But I think when you have guidance, and I do get a lot of people who are still working in their jobs. Like that's actually my absolute favorite is, look, like keep the secure job if you, if it's providing an income while you start moving into, the work you want to be doing. That's the ideal. That's what I did. And yeah, it sounds hard. It's like, oh my God, when am I going to do this? But there's always time. I mean, it's like, it doesn't actually take that much energy to just get it started and put some work into it. This doesn't mean working 24/7. It just means like, hey, if you have enough time to watch Netflix, you probably have enough time to start a business. I mean, really.
No, it's 100% right. Yeah.
Little bit. Yeah, and it's really just steps, curiosity, and then I've seen multiple times. This one I actually find very amusing because it happens to my clients at least once a year. That I get a client that's like, I hate my job. I'm so sick of it. I've been doing this for 20 something years. It's usually someone in their, like 40s, sometimes even 50s, late 30s, who are like, I just can't do it anymore. So they come and they start to work on whatever's next, and then lo and behold, something happens. They get laid off. That's happened multiple times. I have also seen some, what I call like the miracles, where they start offering coaching at their actual work, like in their business. I had a client that worked in a hospital who hated it and started bringing in her, quote, alternative, she had this one like very niche modality that she had studied and really wanted to bring out there. And she started to do it. And then, the people at the hospital started noticing, and then they asked her to bring it into the hospital.
Wow, that's cool.
And she was like, at first they thought she was the crazy one. And then after, 9 months, she became the one actually trying to bring this into the kind of Western system. So, but it's one of those things where it's like, you never know unless you actually go try and put it out there. And I think that's the point where most people get stuck, because it's so easy to talk yourself out of it, especially when it's like, oh, well, I don't have time, or, I have the paycheck, or I'm really busy. But if you actually stop and, do an inquiry with people, they can easily find the time. They just choose not to make it, or this is another one. People get so tired from their job that then they're like, oh, I don't have any energy to do anything else. What I find is the opposite starts to happen. When you start to actually work on something that gets you excited, that inspires you, you start to have more energy, and then your job just shifts. Like, you don't feel soul sucked by your job. That's exactly what happened to me when I started my first business. I started it while working, 12, 13-hour days at my job. And it was like, all of a sudden I was happier and feeling more fulfilled. I had my eyes on something else. It's kind of like, I always use the word, the analogy of Office Space. Like, just go watch it. And, it's like, when you stop giving it all this energy and your heart is excited and inspired by something else, you will actually watch your regular job start to shift. Like, your boss will be oddly like nicer to you. You'll have a different energy in you. And then that way, like, everybody else is like, oh, he's much more, chill all of a sudden, or, seems happier. And then all of a sudden life just seems to get better. And very often I've had clients like actually do both. Like, they've had a job and then they do maybe coaching on the side. Or they start to do coaching and then, like, it takes off and then they quit their job. There's always a way, but really what I like to suggest to people is to look into, where you're heading. Like, where do you want to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and like really be honest with yourself about the future. For me, I remember when I had the career that was sucking my soul, and, it took me like a near-death illness to finally like really start to walk away from it. But I actually could see my future, and I looked around at some of the executives I was working under and was like, oh my God, I don't want to be like them. Just really unhappy, miserable, like literally eating candy for their meals, like smoking cigarettes. I mean, I could go on and on. There's just every ounce of misery. And I just dedicated myself to finding that fulfillment. And that's where I say, like, the little steps, just the little steps, and get some support.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. Just a little side note, Office Space was like my favorite movie when I was like growing up. I used to be able to quote it like the whole thing.
No way.
Not anymore. I don't remember, but yeah, and I actually started doing that. So I think that came out when I was in middle school, and I started taking that approach. I'm like, I'm just not going to do anything today. And like,
maybe that's how you ended up here. I mean, there is something, I forgot which scene it was, but there was just one scene where it's like you could just see the liberation.
Yeah.
I think when he went back into the office and was just
the Bobs are there and they're like, tell me what you do. He's like, I don't know. I come in, I kind of, try to avoid the boss, and I don't do anything for about 3 hours. And
imagine that. Like, I think it's kind of like if someone knew that they were going to get laid off in 6 months, they probably would have an attitude change, they would go have a fire under their butt. Sometimes it really takes for me, I've been there multiple times. I had lost jobs. I had near-death illnesses. I had my father die. I had like multiple, these initiatory events that I, back then I didn't even know what the language was, but it was like, wow, I think something is trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
It was very obvious, especially with the kind of near death. And I've seen this also a lot with clients, people that get, really sick, or, physical injury, or something awful happens. And it's unfortunate, like no one really likes initiations, but you've probably talked about this 1,000 times. It's like, they're there for a reason. They're there to show you something. And if you don't make a pattern change or some kind of interrupt, they're just going to keep happening again and again and again in different ways, you know?
I mean, on this topic, when you were talking a little bit before, like I wanted to ask, like, do you think there is kind of like a spiritual aspect to this work? Because I mean, I think about it, it's like, wanting to make a change, and then something weird just starts to unfold, right? Like, oh, it's like that job I hated, just like they got rid of it, or something happens, right? And as you're talking about, as people start to show up, like, maybe opportunities emerge. Like, is there somewhat, and however we want to define that term, spiritual, like, is there a component here?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I really think, especially people that are playing around with these medicines, or walking this path of expanding, whether they want to or not, by the way. I mean, I had a client a few years ago who went to do mushrooms for the first time in, since probably college or something, maybe, 25, 30 years, and went for one thing, but then, very often it showed him all these other things. And he started just really inquiring about like, well, wait a second, I've been successful, I've made all this money, I've sent kids to college, I bought a house, and I'm really unfulfilled. And, he started questioning like his whole entire career and his, businesses. And I mean, there is something about it. It feels like it's beyond, it's beyond the brain, it's beyond this consciousness, and it's something else pulling. And, when you track this, I mean, I worked with him for almost like a year and a half, and I could track it. It's like you can track someone's evolution very easily from an outside perspective. Then if, people who are working with these medicines or, other non-ordinary states are at all self-aware, they can start to track it within themselves. Like, oh, I feel like there's something, I use this language a lot, like pulling, like you're being pulled in a direction, and you could ignore it as much as possible. But this is where I believe, this is like the initiatory states. Like there's something, spirit, a force, soul, whatever we want to call it, like moving you into the place of, what I believe, it's like brings you fulfillment, what you're here to do, what lights you up, what gets you inspired. People call it alignment. Someone the other day actually said, oh, so you're an alignment coach. Because I've seen this a lot. Like when my clients, actually this just happened to someone, and it's like, you can't make this stuff up. When you're starting to make these shifts towards something that lights you up more and fulfills you, and it feels kind of more real and true to your path, I've seen people then like, call in their partners or get, a house, like a house sale miracle. Like I've seen the weirdest miracles, rekindling relationships with their family and their loved ones, healing. I mean, that's another thing that's like, I don't even like to use the word healing a lot, but I've seen these like miraculous healings, where it's like, oh, I was finally able to reconnect with my estranged siblings, And it's all interconnected, because even though I think in our Western capitalistic society, we've all been taught like, okay, work is just work. That's kind of the old way of thinking. But if you stop and look, like we can't separate any aspect of our life. Like there is no container it goes in. So then if we look at it from a holistic point of view, it's like, well, this is just a piece of, it's like you and your reality and your life and your journey of evolution in this incarnation. So yeah, I do believe it is spirit guided or soul guided. And I teach this with my clients, but the more you're in conversation, it's like engaging with, your, what people might call like your higher self or your true self, and like take away the mask part of yourself and actually be real. Like when you're engaging with that, like you can be in this kind of relationship conversation, and it starts to kind of work with you more. I mean, this is kind of the whole point of, when you're in these medicine spaces, it's like, if you're looking for some kind of healing or growth, it's like you have to strip away the mask to get to like the truth of like what's really happening, or get to the root. And then that's where it's the healing, the evolution. So yeah, I personally don't believe we can separate, I mean, anything. It's a law of physics, first of all. So why separate our work from the rest of our life?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I know we're a little over time, but I'm just kind of curious. One more topic before we close out here. So say, you have your dream job, you're doing what you're aligned with, but you're also starting to feel burnt out. Do you address burnout with your clients? How do we approach this? Like when we are maybe living our sole purpose, but we are feeling maybe a little tired or drained. The energy is just not there.
Yeah. And burnout, I talk about this a lot, actually. I feel like it's come up more the last 4 years than previous years before that. I think it's just everything's moving so fast in our society. People's attention and minds are just being pulled. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm sure you and I probably could say it's like I have like WhatsApp groups, I have Signal groups, I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have email. It's like we are in this like overstimulated society right now, and people's attentions are going everywhere. So burnout does happen, and then you throw in like the world and the energetics and then life in itself. And we have to take care of our nervous systems. By the way, especially as an entrepreneur, I do know back when I worked at a corporate job, I mean, I could show up there hungover like a zombie and like get through the job. Yeah, like just kind of like hide in the corner and hope that no one asks me any questions, But when you work for yourself or serving clients, you really have to watch it and take care. I personally try to take Fridays off, or at least like most of the day. Maybe not the entire year, but a lot of the year. I try to balance, not working too much. Like if by the way, if my eyes, like if your eyes are literally being strained, like step away from the damn computer. And people it's like everything in life. We cannot always be on. We cannot always be breathing in. It's really like attuning with your nervous system so much, where you're going to have a contraction, you're going to have an expansion, you're going to have contraction. And entrepreneurs tend to get pretty freaked out by contractions. Like, oh my God, I've had 2 months without clients. You know what? It's okay. It's not forever, and really like, okay, so how do you use this space and time? When people are dealing with real life things like deaths of loved ones, parents, moving, I've had a lot of clients like move over the years. Yeah, if you are moving, deal with the move. It's like if you can find a little space to show up for yourself or your business, go for it. But really, I really believe in like grounding, like being grounded, having a nervous system that's like in a good place. And, if you have a day where you're just not functional, do the bare minimum or don't do anything at all. I mean, that's what I do. It's like there's just days where I'm like, oh, I can't even function today. Well, maybe I'll do some little like back end things that don't really take a lot of thought or energy, or maybe I'll just like go to sleep early and have a better day tomorrow. And sometimes that's months. I've seen clients, go through divorces or losses or grief, and like, we have to tend to it. I think it's like, I always say like, we're creating a new paradigm with this kind of, entrepreneurship and this world that we're hopefully co-creating, this more beautiful world we all know is possible. But if we're kind of operating in kind of the old world way of we push through when we're sick, like, I mean, I always found it really interesting with COVID. I'm like, why did we ever go to work sick? Like, right, yeah. I used to go to work sick all the time. It should be against the law, right? Like, stay at home if you're sick.
I used to work at a deli, and like the one guy would come in with like the flu, and I'm like, why are you doing this, making food for somebody? Oh, and then I think about like, that probably happens all over the place, right?
But yeah, and that's where it's like a root systemic issue, which is a whole other thing. But as an entrepreneur, you get the choice to say like, you know what? I am sick. I'm not going to plow through this, because that's programming. It's not, there's no one out there telling you. And by the way, even the world that, like the US mostly lives in, it's like, that's pure programming. There's no rule that says like we should go into work 5 days a week for 8 hours a day and not only have 2 weeks of pay time off. It's ridiculous. So entrepreneurs, it's really up to us to like double down so much on, I don't even like to use self-care because it sounds like bubble baths, but it's like, especially when you're caring for other people, if you're holding space or if you're a therapist, no one wants to go. I think I've done a podcast on this. Like, I don't want to go to a burnout facilitator for a ceremony.
No, not at all.
Oh my God. Can you imagine being in a psychedelic therapy session and your therapist is like falling asleep
staring
when you're
at
tripping
the wall yeah.
I'd be pissed. I'd be like, give me my money back. So, that's why it's even more important for people that are working with others, especially, by the way, if you are a psychedelic space holder. I mean, we can talk. It's like, then we have to get into like energetic self-care, like you're holding people's souls, energies, like, there's so much to it.
Yeah. And I think there's like sometimes like a guilt, especially if those that are listening are like entrepreneurial, like having to always be on. And I was just talking to somebody the other day about this because I feel that guilt. I'm like, I'm stepping away from the computer. Like I have so much stuff to do. There's just a million things to constantly do. But I realize those times that I step away to either hike, snowboard, go on a long bike ride, it's actually helping me problem solve. Yeah. And it's like I actually need that time away so I can like think about the problem differently. And like, I think we need to discuss that. We were talking about this. We're like, we actually need to discuss like what is work, and if we're stuck on a problem in front of the computer all day and we're just kind of like, going in circles, maybe that is time to go do something like, that kinesthetic like movement that, so many people say, I have so many ideas in the shower, right? It's like, how do we not always feel guilty when we step away when it might actually aid in some sort of problem solving, gives us the energy back to maybe go tackle whatever that is. I think it's really important.
I say that all the time. I've assigned clients, meditate instead of posting on Instagram. It's like, come on, like, go on a hike, without your phone. I had this experience, I think when I was like my very early days as an entrepreneur. It was one of my first workshops. And I remember I was like, okay, I should study this so I really know this material. And then I was like, well, wait, or I could just meditate. And I meditated instead. And I went and delivered the workshop just like in full, like channeled state, because when it's embodied, And so this is where I say to people, like, you need a daily practice. You need some kind of grounding practice, like get onto the earth, like quiet your mind. And I see this a lot, like people, again, this comes back to like this world we're in where people think they need to be like doing this and doing that and posting this and sharing that. And it's like, where's it coming from? So yes, that is a very good point. And very often I'm very much like you. I'll just like go out and go for a walk or go on a hike, or by the way, especially if it's a really nice day, like you can't work on a good snow day. I actually have a regret. We had a really epic snow day last year, or in the winter, but it was on a Monday, and Monday's like, I have a meeting, I have a reoccurring meeting. It was like our only good snow day up here. Man. And I was like, I really regretted not taking that day off.
You only have so many snow days and nice days, and you never know if you're going to be alive next year to
exactly.
or the next
and
day
I'm like,
to.
Oh. And you're right. Like that is work,
I do so much thinking when I'm out there, and there's like this sense of guilt, but it also, I think you use the term just like embodiment. It helps me to like somatically process my day. And I go, I actually needed that space to think about whatever I'm dealing with in a different way to get new insights or get the energy to go tackle it. So I think we just need like those reminders, because the guilt definitely takes over. And I think in our just like heavy work culture, it's like, I'm not like on all the time. And it's like, when in history have humans been available like 24/7, as you're saying, like WhatsApp channels, like Instagram, Facebook, like email, and like, just carrying these things around all day, and it's just like, whoa, you're always on. And there is that like, fatigue. I think I know I experience. I'm like, sometimes I can't even like message friends back, because it's like, I'm dealing with so much work stuff, and I'm like, my brain is just so frazzled.
And this is like, I take time out like offline. I go on retreats. I try to do weekends without like, I try to be off technology on the weekends. Really just for, it's now starting to affect, like, I can feel it affect my mind, my eyes.
Yep.
And it's like, oh.
Like, am I just like slowly developing brain cancer, just staring at screens all day?
And you're right. And I also, this is something else I teach my clients. I run an entire business with no notifications on.
Wow.
What I do is I have like, I've become very good at this where it's like, yeah, I mean, unless I'm like in the middle of like goofing off or whatever, but I check certain things like at, X times a day and that's it, I mean, but if I had the notifications dinging me for every app and especially, by the way, and I've kind of given hierarchy where it's like, okay, I'm in a million Signal groups. Like, I ignore them mostly all. Like, if anyone contacts me on Signal and they don't get a response, it's like, well, find me somewhere else. So I have like, it's like Signal, Telegram, all these random apps I'm on. They're like really at the bottom rung, unless it's like blatantly someone's telling me, hey, I'm going to message you on Signal. Sure. And then it's like I turn all my WhatsApp notifications off, all my Instagram, Facebook, and it's like I don't check them unless it's like part of the day, it's like part of the schedule. And I've had clients complain about this. They're like, oh, I just get so wrapped up, where especially if you're not present, you'll go check something and next thing you know, you ended up on, 10 pages later, you're like, how did I end up here? Yeah. What did I come here for in the first place?
That happens all the time. Yeah.
Oh my God, I get it. All of us. But this is where I think I keep saying there's going to be a backlash where people are just going to be like, this is annoying. It's like,
I think so. I think presence. We can, like, our nervous systems can only handle so much, and this is so new for humans to deal with. And yeah, I wonder what that's going to be like. Just total dissociation, backlash, like
the election.
Yeah, that
people just be like, I'm off.
Yeah.
I said to myself, I'm like, if I don't need to be on here for my business, I would actually shut off probably all social media for the next like 3 months, but.
I mean, I feel that way just in general. Like, I'd probably shut it off, like, if I wasn't running a business or needing to be out there, right? But it's also like that's where people are hanging out and where we need to engage. But yeah.
Catch 22. We'll see what happens in the future. Really. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe AI will just
do it for us.
Take it all over, and that's that. And then we'll all be trying to figure things out.
Yeah. Beth, this has been fun. I feel like we can continue to keep chatting, but yeah, we're over time here. Anything that you want to close with? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, this has really been great. And I encourage people to, really listen to themselves, get present, create some space, and, tap into your future. And also, please, like, get some support. There's, people like me, like great coaching programs. There's also lots of integration coaches, people out there who have been through this and can just hold that space for you in your evolution, your journey. So that's the one thing I always say, like, living in this day and age that we're living in, I do not know how people don't have support. I mean, it's like, it's not easy being alive. It's crazy times for humanity. And, I think we are going to have to usher each other through this. So please, like, reach out. I know Psychedelics Today has lots of referrals. I have tons of referrals. We probably have a lot of the same referrals. And, there's a lot of great people out there who are here to hold space for your evolution.
Beautiful. Thank you. And if anybody's curious to work with you, learn more about you, where can people find you? And what do you have going on?
Yeah, sure. Well, my group mastermind program is opening up. We start in January, so it's opening up this autumn. I'm at bethaweinstein.com. You can check out the mastermind. I also offer private coaching. I do have some other shorter offerings, and I'm not sure when this is being published, but I'm actually offering kind of just for fun, but really excited because I've not done something like this out in the public yet. But a former client and I are offering a rose dieta that will take place before the election. There is no psychedelics involved. It's just connection with the rose, and it's a guided container of 5 weeks. And it's we're kind of offering it as a like pay what you wish, with some kind of guidelines. But it's, what I'm seeing is we all need this medicine before, this kind of time frame that we're living in. So that's going to come out in mid-September. It's going to be available, and we'll start in early October.
Awesome. Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for your time and being here and the great conversation. And thank you everybody for listening.
Thanks for having me.